Okay, we've got a special guest here tonight, local celebrity Frank Brandel, who's going to give us some insight on uh, the ups and downs of life and death. Um, so this is not advising, do not take this as medical advice. We are not advocating any kind of medical procedure, anything like that. Please consult your doctor before making any life-altering decisions. Okay, so I'll start this off. I was this dorky, nerdy kid in high school, middle school, and I didn't have any friends. And one day I run into this guy, and forget how it was, but he just said something, and I said something. And we struck up this friendship. Next thing you know, we were moving the social studies teacher, moving his classroom out into the hallway one day, and which he thought was very amusing, and then put it back in.
Where did you guys go to school?
Went to Overbrook.
Overbrook Junior High.
Yeah.
Oh, so you guys met in junior high, not high school?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it was like ninth grade. It was like the very end.
It was 7th, 8th, and 9th was junior high, and then you went to the senior high. It's now like
Middle
school.
So you guys been friends for...
Well, we hadn't seen each other in 20 years.
Yeah.
And then Facebook came along.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then, like, a friend of us, like, oh, wow, he's still alive. I thought for sure somebody would have killed him by now.
Which I was sure of too.
It was shocking. So then and it was great because it was just like he said, like we left the cafeteria in the middle of a conversation. 20 years later, we resumed the conversation. Take that as you will.
That's a rare thing.
It was literally, we had a common friend. It was a cheerleaders fundraiser for like Halloween or something. We went, and when my wife asked me that night, what was it like? I said, we sat down and it was like the day before. 20 years had gone by, you get up, and it's the next day, and you're just going in and putting in a conversation, whatever it was, whatever you were talking about.
It's amazing, isn't
You just
it?
have gray hair.
Well, back then we didn't. Because this was
Actually,
15
I
years
had
ago.
gray hair since I was 19. I got a full head of hair, but a lot of gray.
Yeah, this was 15 years
My
ago, so
apologies.
it was a lot darker back then.
Oh, yeah.
But it's interesting because you talk to women and they haven't talked to somebody in a while. They're going to be like, oh my God, I haven't seen him in so long. What am I going to say? And it's like, douchebag, asshole. It's like, and we're good to go.
Yes.
They have to be jealous. They have to be like, it has to drive them a little bit crazy. Like, how do they do that? But anyway, so we started, and then Sue started doing theme parties.
A friend of ours.
Yeah, she went to
A
high
friend of
school.
ours from high school,
Yeah.
which is in the overall lap of this to make it easier. Most of the people we're friends on Facebook with are not people we were friends with in school. I hung out with a very rough crowd. These people were a lot of audio visual people or just good students. I was an A student, but I was a D-bag and a half. You know, so these were not people that would be in our social circle, especially mine, by a long shot. And it was not always by choice, it was by reputation. You know, the difference between fame and infamy. Everybody knew who I was and they all hated me, but most of them had no idea why.
Okay.
You know, that kind of thing. So,
He was just the guy you were supposed to hate.
yeah. So they were like, she moved up here from, I think at the time they were living in Virginia.
Virginia.
They moved
So,
up
right,
here. And they actually moved fairly close to me. And one time we get an invite to this party at Michelle's house, I think was the first one. She was another friend. And Sue actually told me one time, she said, our other close friend, Karen, her best friend, says, why don't you invite these guys to the party? Like, it's not like we were friends with them or anything like that. She goes, just go with it. I think there's something there that we missed or didn't realize. So this is like after a year or two on Facebook. So we started getting invited to these parties, and I'll let you go.
Well, incidentally, I have a guy that I know. I was talking about, like, you know, your issues and stuff like that, and he said, wait, I've seen this guy on Facebook, Frank. Yeah, I like watching you two, like, you know, go back and forth. It's like watching a comedy skit. You know, we were just like, it's volleyball back and forth. Like, I'd serve up and he'd serve up, and we just keep it going back. And everybody's sitting back there watching, like, this is so bizarre, but it's funny. It's, you know, it's a great, and then so you start seeing this, and then we go to The one time at Sue's house, like Frank gets the idea to, had something little, like he told her son.
No, it was Mardi Gras, and it was, I ordered a case of beads from Amazon.
That's a lot of titties.
Oh, yeah. We didn't see any that night, and for the most part, we're sure we didn't want to.
Yeah, it was, everybody was pretty close to 50, like,
Yeah.
like,
Oh, it's the reunion.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the nude beach. When you see them, you don't want to see them.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, like, we
Would you like to
actually,
see these?
our class was too cheap to actually put together a reunion, so we all met at a bar, or a bunch of us met at a bar. That was the extent of the reunion, but a lot of these things were just parties getting together. So he gets all these beads, and like, what are you going to do with them? So she gets her son to start hiding them all around the house. For a month, she's like, you see a Facebook post, look what I found, Frank.
And now here's the part that's really funny. It took 8 or 9 years, I think it was. Actually, it was closer to maybe 12. So she's talking about it one time, and all these years she thought like I violated her privacy because the son put them in like her underwear drawer or socks or negligees. So for all these years she thinks I'm a pervert, yet she's still inviting me to these parties. And not long ago at a wine tasting, I don't drink, but I went anyway just to see people. And her husband turns to her and goes, she was talking about it, her husband says, it was Sam. Sam told me that years ago, that Frank paid him $5 to put these things in there. And so for all these years, you thought I was a pervert, but still fun to hang out with. So I guess that's okay.
Yeah, well, there it goes.
I think part of the conversation we had on the phone the other night was a few years ago, a mutual friend of ours passed away. So, you know how it is with funerals and stuff, and they always ask, would anybody like to come up and say something? Well, it wasn't a big list of people in the world to do it. And I'm a fairly good public speaker. You know, I don't have to imagine people in their underwear. For the love of God, I don't want to. So I get up there and I start telling the story about me and Bob, and we were in Boy Scouts together and the whole thing. And halfway through the story, I
Well, you should
realized,
probably jump in and explain to them what Bob's issue was.
well, we'll get to Bob in a second. So the point was that I got halfway through the story and I realized me and Bob had been the last two people alive that remembered the event I was talking about. And Bob was one of these guys that he was about as rude, crude, weird. If there was a creepy category women would put him in, but he was a great guy. He really was. He just, for whatever reason, he always had to come across as the absolute pervert. And so when I got up to speak, I looked out at the crowd and I said, you know, for the first time in my life, I'm standing an entire group of people in front of me, and there's absolutely no way I can offend anybody here. Because
We're all friends with Bob.
we all knew Bob. And he was just a good guy. He had, you know, had a big heart, anything for you, that kind of stuff. But he just came across as really crude, so people took him wrong.
And he didn't have the social skills. It was, everything was very awkward.
Whereas I possessed the skills, but just didn't really use them.
Choose not to exercise them.
Yeah, I was an outcast, so I just went with it. I didn't try to change the perception. And I think a lot of the things we talk about is different generations, like especially now. And it's not about bashing an entire group. It's about the reaction to what you are and what you do, and the consequences of what you are and what you do. You mess up now, you go online, you cheer up, and thousands of people, instead of being just supportive or sorry to hear that, they try to tell you you're right no matter what. The victim mentality is the worst thing. And it's not just this generation. We have it in our own. We have Facebook friends that are like that. We have work friends that are like that. No matter how they tell that story, they're the victim.
Oh, we got whole cultures that are like that.
Yeah, and that's the culture. So one of the things we did when we were talking was most of the time, as I mentioned to you guys off camera, it's these old guys in their 80s. You know, you see in the movie 2 old guys, 3 old guys with canes, poking at the young people, making fun of them, yelling at my day or whatever. It doesn't matter what day you're in. Your environment might have been different. Your struggles might have been different. But as a human being, everybody's the same. And if you keep getting into this thing where everybody's a victim, you take out that part of the humanity that lets that person grow. So we thought that sitting down and just talking about our experiences, if it helps even one person realize that it may not be as bad as they think, they may not be as trapped as they think, that would be a good thing.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, Andy mentioned it, he gave an example. You want to tell the example about some guy at work you talked to one day, and he,
Well, everything's relative. You have people that will have something happen that seems very, very mild, but if that's the worst they've ever struggled with, then to them that's the worst thing they've ever struggled with. It's kind of like when you're a little kid, you fall down, you skin your knee. That's the worst pain you've ever felt until you get older, get married, and realize I wish I had that skin knee again. And but everything is relative. And when I was lucky that when my mom was dying and I dropped her off at the hospital, I was kind of irritable. I had gotten 2 hours sleep. I was working overnight, and she woke me up in the afternoon. I had about 2 hours sleep to drive over to the hospital over the city. And I'm like, and she's like, I really appreciate it. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I wish you would have told me earlier. And so I go home, go to sleep, get up, go to work, come back in the morning, go to sleep. My brother wakes me up a couple hours later. Mom slipped into a coma. We don't know if she's coming out of it. Fortunately, she came out of it. But I understood that I got lucky, and I realized that I had a chance to put things to rest. And you see people, and you should have some compassion, because even when people are going through something, for them it's the worst thing out there. And one of the things that I was looking at with this was, until you get to know Frank, you look at him and it's like, wow, this guy's an asshole, and he just doesn't filter things. It's not that he doesn't have a filter; he doesn't filter. We had a friend on Facebook who had a friend who thought Frank was really funny. He decided to send him a friend request. So Frank reached out to the mutual friend and said, "Does she know what she's getting into?" She's like, "I tried warning her,"
which I did.
And so she's on there like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I just threw up in my boss's car." So Frank says, "You shouldn't have swallowed." Block. But it's those that real
The voyeur got the realism.
that real personality that comes through. It's like, I'm not going to filter things. I'm not going to play
The
nice.
problem is now people get so offended at everything.
Exactly.
It's like, life, you have to joke.
Yeah.
If you don't joke, what do you have? What do you have
Well, that's why we have so many miserable people.
Yeah, because everything is so serious. We talked a little off camera about my health issues, and one of the funniest things that I've ever seen in my life was, back in the day, you had to pay cash for your TV and your hospital bedroom. So I would bet that for the hospitals, they couldn't get the blood on the first stick. And I used to pay for my TV that way. And I thought it was historical. I'm making money. I'm laying here dying, but I'm making a profit while I'm doing it. I'm paying for that
Did you give
TV.
them an extra little shake as they were?
No, I was so pin-cushioned up, they were all so cocky. Oh, I can get a single stick, I can do this. And they can't. Pull up one. And I just opened the drawer and they drop it in, close it, and then with the lady come around every day to collect it, it's in the drawer. It's kind of like a victimization thing,
Yeah.
But it's, like Andy said, comparison. What are you comparing it to?
Well, that's what brings us back to the original thing
To the
of
empathy.
when you look at his life, and people will look at him like, oh wow. Then you find out about him, and so his father dies before he's born, right? Yeah, just, let's take us through, like, let's skip the conception part, because nobody needs to hear that.
Well,
It happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can tell everybody out there it was Valentine's Day, 1966, because if you do the math, that's 9 months. So Dad was moving, I guess, that night. But yeah, my biological father and his best friend, who happened to be married to my mom's sister, were killed in a car accident on Good Friday of '66. I was born in November, and you know, there was a lot of positive male role models and stuff like that. There was a lot of bitterness between the family, and the term love and attention and affection just didn't get thrown around a lot. Neither did the actual physical concept of any of those things. So I was pretty independent, even by the time I was 4 or 5.
Okay, well, hang on a second. So we have to go back to birth, okay? And let's discuss, like, the physiology that you're born with, because that plays into everything.
Yeah, well, by the time I got to 14 or whatever, I was having issues. And relative to medications and tests and whatever was available. So from the age of 14 to 24, I was told all the time I was making stuff up. I was lying. That couldn't be
What were some of
possible.
the issues? Like, what were some of the?
I was having a lot of abdominal pains, and I really couldn't eat all the time. And even though I was an athlete, I played baseball and I worked all the time. So for 10 years, it was literally, you're making this shit up, you're a liar.
Similar
Yeah.
shit, abdominal pain.
So this is where it ties into the family emotion thing. So when I'm 24, you know, that's when CAT scans became more common. And they discovered the tumor in my pancreas. And all of a sudden, all that, you know, lack of emotional support.
Well, you have one kidney, right?
Well, yeah, that's a small part of it.
And your internal organs are on the right side of your body.
Kind of shifted.
But wait,
So-
wait.
so-
Who was saying that? Like, who didn't believe you? Was it the doctors or was it your family, or both?
Blaming. Well, I always used to joke. My mom figured out every disease her family had and went down to somebody else that had every disease they didn't have and made it.
No, who, you said who wasn't believing?
Yeah,
So your family didn't believe you had these issues
they
for
didn't
10
believe
years?
I was sick. Doctors didn't believe I was sick. And my
It's all
mom,
in your head.
who worked for a doctor, doctors were gods. So whenever I would defend myself or whatever, I think the saddest part about it is my maternal grandmother believed my mother and died thinking I was a liar. Died thinking that I was making stuff up, trying to get out of stuff, which didn't make sense. I was an athlete. I was a straight A student. You know, what was I trying to get out of?
Mhm.
You know. So to get to Andy's point, when I had the neck surgery in 2004, they did a complete body MRI. And if anybody remembers the old printer paper, the green and white lines,
Yeah,
square line,
dots on each side.
that measuring printers. So the doctor comes into my room and he's got this thing and he's like, "This is all the stuff your body is missing." I'm like, "Well, I knew about the missing kidney because I had a CAT scan." And the guy said, "Excuse me, sir, when did you have that kidney removed?" And I said, "Unless you did it in the last 5 minutes, nobody took it out." So apparently I'm missing like 63% of everything that's supposed to be on the left side of your body.
So, cautionary point here. Be careful where you park your womb,
Yeah,
because somebody will go in there and steal shit.
yep. But it's weird. It's like blood vessels, capillaries, pieces of bones, pieces of this, pieces of that. And you're like, how can I be missing that much shit?
It's
Good.
almost
And as
like
far
they-
as you know, normal birth, normal.
Well, with my mom,
Well, you were there, so please
Yeah.
don't.
I mean, I had a scar on my eye where they got me with the forceps. Because my mom is really short, so I guess not wide, so they had to use forceps, so I got a scar on my eye. But it
You're
all,
that close to being a pirate.
yes, by choice. So all of that stuff adds into where you come from. But how you deal with it was since I never had emotional support or was never open, I just figured that's the way it was. So to survive this stuff, I used hate and anger. Just pure rage, hate, and anger. Because there's no way I was going to drop dead. Because there would be people happy if I died. And I'm not in the business of making people happy.
Right.
It's not my favorite thing.
Check
So,
and respect.
so it kind of just led down that road over the years. And so, like I said, when somebody tells me they're sick, like his example, or the worst pain they ever had was a skinned knee, or the worst thing they ever had was a broken arm, you have my sympathy. You have my understanding. Because literally you have nothing to compare it to. So,
But life will come along and teach you.
yes. Because in the end, everybody gets whacked.
That's a good perspective, though, because I know other people that'll say, "Oh, you're complaining about this, but I have X, Y, Z," which is
Yeah.
worse than what you have.
Mhm.
But it's all perspective.
Right.
And that's why I explained it's nobody can say who has it the worst. I'm mobile, I can drive, I can work, I can do whatever I wanted to do within reason of the illnesses. Whereas somebody who had MS or uh, some other horrible disfiguring disease that you see on the Shriners commercials, well, of course that person might have it worse than
Even
you.
if you don't have, even if something is not like tangible, but you have a lot of mental illness.
Mental.
I think
Yeah.
that is scary in itself, and there's no, your thought process is just so jacked up.
Yeah.
So
And I mean, so the victimization part, self-victimization part, is I've never seen myself as a victim. I mean, I've been down to the point where I was like, this fucking sucks. Why do I have to go through this? Because anybody's going to do that.
yeah, that'd be
You know,
human.
And so I was a little upset. Well, last year I made a lot of overtime and I was getting into a hobby and I had time and vacation and all this stuff. Well, now that's all out the door. So I tried not to do a lot of hope and stuff like that because you get too hopeful about stuff. Disappointment can be pretty bad. And that can destroy you just as fast as, anything, any disease can.
Yeah.
You're realistic about it. Now, somebody without my life experience, who's suddenly at 50 years old or whatever, told, yeah, you have stage 4 liver cancer. That person's probably going in the tank, mentally. Like, what the fuck? Like, what is this? Me, I have the experience. So, experience-wise, I mean,
It's
it doesn't hurt you in any way, shape, or form to reach out to somebody who's in pain, who's having a problem, talk to. And people are very often surprised that I'll text somebody or message somebody that you could tell they're going through a particularly tough time. And that's never the self-victimization one, But it doesn't cost me anything to try to say a couple of words to you, even if it's 2 nights a week for a month. Just to let you know somebody's there and listening and want to vent, whatever. Because everybody always says, well, if there's anything I could do, how about you just do it? I was friends on Facebook with a girl who unfortunately had breast cancer. I had never met her. We never spoke in person. And for months, I would send her the worst joke I could think of every day. And
There's an extensive list.
yeah, and people told me it was the highlight of her day. This is somebody I never met.
Well, also, I think that obviously there's different kinds of people. Some people, they will get an addiction to the attention they get from having some kind of problem. They have some kind of illness or something that's hurting them, and they will almost become sort of a celebrity with, like it becomes their personality, like, and they get the attention from
Exactly.
that. But then there's other people who they get so tired of everybody, how are you? How you feeling? How you, like, and it's so refreshing when somebody just comes along and say, we had a receiver at work, this guy Rich, and Rich was nice guy, born again Christian. He came down with cancer, and it's a lot of people in Hamilton came down with cancer. And we had our butcher Brian, and Brian, one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. And so Rich, he's out sick, so he's out of work. And one day he comes in the store to visit, and he's walking along the back of the store, and Brian says, "What are you doing still alive?" And it just made his day because everybody was walking on eggshells around him to make sure, treat him gently. And somebody just treated him like everybody else, just like you're just normal like everybody else.
Which is important.
But I wonder if most people want that, because you do have to understand the difference in dynamics of people.
Yeah.
Like knowing him, you're like, you got to give him shit, right?
Yeah.
But knowing other people that are more sensitive, you got to be weary of.
Well, see,
certain things.
I think it comes down to the kind of person you are. Like, I believe that myself, I would much rather have somebody be honest with me and tell me they think I'm an asshole.
Mhm.
That's fine. I don't care. It's like, I would much rather know how you really feel. That way, we don't have to I'm not going to put on airs. If I don't like somebody, I'm not going to go and
See, I wouldn't say it. I just be like, I'm not hanging out with this person.
well, yeah, that's basically what I do.
Yeah.
I don't feel the need to go and express to somebody that I think you're a jackass and here's why. That's what
It's needless. There's no benefit.
exactly.
Unless you're looking for confrontation.
Yeah.
But for the most part my saying has always been, if I gave a fuck what people thought about me, I'd never leave my goddamn house.
Yeah.
Because 99% of the people you talk to are the worst dickhead they ever met.
Which is funny because they'll talk to other people who he reaches out to and they think to themselves like, is there another Frank that is doing these things? Because I never met that person. Because everybody has this expectation where we're all going to pretend to be nice to each other. And it's funny too because we met in junior high and high school, and everybody always does is they act nice to your face. They stab you in the back when you're not looking, and it's like, look, let's just be honest. Like, you don't like me. Let's not pretend that you like me. So let's just and move on from there.
We can be civil, but we don't have to be friends.
Yeah.
Well, people can't separate that now.
Yeah, it's like,
It's the same thing if you believe one political direction, they'll hate you. They won't even want. They don't even
And
want
there's
to talk
no
with you.
and there's no rational thinking.
Yeah.
Like if we went through all this Trump stuff now, right? So if someone's like, "Oh my God, you support Trump?" I'm like, "Well, give me the rationale of why you're supporting Kamala," right? But they can't do it.
I'm interested in somebody's opinion. If I hung out with people like me all the time, I could have fun, but there's no intellectual growth. There's no stimulation to that. I want to know why you disagree
Plus,
with me.
it could change your opinion.
It's
right.
possible.
Probably
Well,
knock some stuff.
Well,
But
like,
Yeah.
well, what it comes down to is there's a reality, and the reality is that you're in this world alone. You're on your own.
Yeah.
You can have people along the way. You can have some support along the way, but nobody can go through with you what you're going through. They can empathize. They can say, "Man, I feel so bad for you. That's horrible." No, horrible would be you feeling what I feel.
Yes.
That would be horrible. Then you'll really understand.
Mhm.
And I've watched both my parents and one of my brothers go through terminal cancer, and you watch this level of suffering. It's like our friend Bob. Bob would go to work, come home, go to the bar with his friends, drink beer and play pool. And then one night, this girl is there and she says to him, "You look like shit." And he's like, "Gee, thanks." And you need to go to the doctor. He's like, "Fuck that, I'm not going to the doctor." It's like, "Tell you what, if I beat you in this game of pool, you have to go to the doctor." He's like, "Fine, you've never beaten me in a game of pool." So they sit down and play pool, and she wins. Bob, being a man of his word, which would shock a lot of people, goes to the doctor. Doctor tells him, "You're in liver failure. You have 6 months to live." From that day forward, he never took another drink. And all he ever drank was beer. Didn't drink anything hard. Just drank beer.
But lots of it.
Yes. because that's what you do when you're in a bar playing pool all night.
Yeah.
But a lot of people do that, and a lot of people don't get the liver disease, but he did. All right, so it's bad luck on his part with that. But he, from that day forward, and it was sort of like a lot of people looked at him like he was, and I really I didn't know him as well as Frank did. They grew up together and they played on the same baseball teams and stuff. And I was in a little outcast town that nobody went to. And there were some people that were shocked to find out what a nice guy Bob was. And this is the thing. I was 23 and my dad died. 7 months later, my mom died. Everybody was always like, I feel so bad for you losing your parents that young. And I'm like, well, now I look at things, I look at people who are my age and they're losing their parents now. And I'm like, well, you're losing your parents you've had for 50 years. You've gotten much more attached to them than I ever did. Yeah, it was hard back then, but I saw very different ways to handle death. My father fought in World War II, and he expected to die in the Battle of the Bulge. And he made it to 68. And so he was pretty much resigned that he had been living on borrowed time because he asked God to let him get to 40. There he was at 40 years old holding his firstborn son, and now like, wow, all right, maybe I don't want to check out just yet. So, but he had colon cancer, and watching the suffering that he went through, I remember like my dad was 6 foot tall and 250 pounds every day that I knew him. And I was at work one night, and I see coming out of the back stock room, and I see this little old man walking towards me, and I'm like, don't think, and I hear him call my name. Like the shock was like the little old man, the frail little old man is my dad. I hadn't seen him like that. And when you watch people you care about, it's funny because when you watch people dying, there's when it's an extended illness, it's harder on the person that goes through the illness, but it's much easier on the family because they get to suffer through with you, watching you do this and watching the amount of pain you're going through.
As opposed to a sudden death where it's just shock.
Right.
Somebody shows up at your door and cops tell you, mom or aunt were killed in a car accident. That doesn't give you the closure.
Right.
And I think people, despite not wanting to see you suffer, it's actually easier on them.
Yes.
Because then they feel like, oh, well, we had this amount of time or that amount of time. And the object of this podcast is not to be drawn down by the sob stories or the bad stories or however you want to put it. It's to show that everybody, even though they have it different, there's something they can take from everybody's life and everybody's story that might help them even a little bit.
Well, it's a choice.
Well, that's what we talk about this a lot too. Our brother died when he was 23 years old. I've been raising his daughter since she was 11 months old. Mm-hmm. And like you said, the shock is horrific for the family. Great for him.
Yeah.
He didn't feel a thing.
Right.
But the opposite is when you're living but dying, it's worse for you, but better for your family because you can talk to you and say.
Well, that's what it is. Like, when I looked at my parents and my brother, my dad was okay. It's time. I'm fine with it. And he was accepting of it. And it was a pretty smooth transition. My mom fought it the whole way, and she lingered on with her suffering more than she had to. My brother, his physical body was so strong, and his heart was so strong, it kept going much longer past the point where he should have just been able to go. But I cast no aspersions on people. I fully understand when people say, like, I've had enough. Like, how much are you expected to take? Now, that being said, I think that you should exhaust all the possibilities because
At least know them.
Life is better than no life. Life is possibilities. It could turn around tomorrow, but it might not. But it could. once it's done, all right, there's no lottery ticket around your corner.
And some people stay around because of other events. My grandson or son is graduating high school, and you know that your wife or whatever is on their way out, and they last until the day after that
Well,
event.
that's why
right?
most people stay around. It's not
Right.
for
Yeah.
them,
It's
for the others.
It's goal oriented. Like I was very conscious at Christmas and New Year's for my grandkids. I didn't want them or anybody in the family to see how bad I was. So I did Christmas morning with the kids. I did the family dinner. We did cut out the middle of the afternoon because I explained to my sister, she knew what was wrong, that I just couldn't physically do a 14-hour day and make it through, which they were fine with. But, you know, I
Shit,
just
can't
wanted to
even do that.
and make sure that they had their time. And in my mind, that's the last time I see that. So I wanted to enjoy it as much as I could. So I wasn't as vocal or verbal or social on our Christmas night dinner with the big portion of the family because people start asking questions and you don't want to lie. And for the most part, most of my friends don't don't know what shape I'm in. Some of them have reached out to me, you know, just because they suspect it. But as far as hanging around and stuff like that, it's my wife's grandmother said she was in her 90s, mostly had her health until her last year. And at her birthday, she said, "Yeah, I'm all back on this." I said, "Well, don't you want to see?" She goes, "Honey, if I did it that way, I'd have to see this one go from 6 months to 18 years to graduate in college. I had my run. It was a good run, you know."
Well, that's the thing. You have to look at, you know, you can hang around, but if you're going to be miserable, are you really worth hanging around with?
And
Is you want to be the person that you want to be.
Yeah.
And there's like, and I believe that because there's a lot of people that will take things because they're having a bad day. They're having like, you know, I'm sad.
what
I'm
was
like,
me?
and they, this isn't worth going on. Well, there's a lot of things when your physical body is failing you, and there's no other recourse. You know that you're heading over that cliff, and there's no avoiding it. And it's going to be slow motion going down the cliff, landing on each jagged rock, landing on the bottom, and laying there for a few hours until you finally check out.
Yep.
And somebody says to you, well, you know, if you don't quite go that far and you hit this wall here just a little quicker, I don't fault people for that. But the difference is make sure that you do not have any other alternatives. I think that like we see things going on in Canada, we see things going on in Europe where the assisted
Suicide.
you can't say those words on podcasts. And
Really?
Dr. K,
Yes.
the Dr. K.
There's words that you can't say, or they
Kevorkian. Can we get away
yes.
with that?
So they you have to look at these things and say like, if there is no hope, and I mean that like
Zero.
you should, but and you can decide when is a good time for you. I think most of the time life pretty much comes and takes that out of your hands anyway. But I don't believe that a 25-year-old should say, you know what, I've had enough of this, I'm done. Unless, of course, like, you know, you're suffering from some kind of cancer, leukemia, whatever, and every single day is just excruciating pain.
Because it was
you're more or less
25.
talking about like these people that are raised nowadays that the only mental stress or you know, what, it's just too much. I can't do this. Or is it like you said, if they have a serious physical disease, yes. But the concept that you're going to give up on yourself because it's a rough time or because you're not popular or because you didn't get the job you wanted or enough likes on your site, you know. I mean,
We have
these
to
are the,
separate temporary from permanent.
yes, and these are the things I want people out there, anybody who may watch this, say, you know what, you're right. Like tomorrow, I could have posted something last night that suddenly goes viral and blows up in the biggest thing in the world.
Yeah.
But if you live expecting that, like, not everything deserves a medal.
Yeah.
You're not the last winner. Dude, you're a loser. You lost.
Like
It's reality.
participation trophies
Yeah.
should go away.
Well, that's
Life itself is actually the trophy.
Yeah,
And
the fact I said this the other day too. Like the fact that you're living in the U.S., which is one of the best countries in the world, in a good area in the U.S., and you have a job, you already won.
Yeah.
I could argue that.
well, that's the thing. Like I was saying to Frank the other day when he was telling me about his latest issues, and
I prefer the word debacle.
I like that on a t-shirt.
there's a lot of there's people that are born in some third world country where there's constant warfare. You have to worry about people kicking your door in, abusing you, and starving and things like that.
Disease.
But on the scale of, if anybody's ever seen Shyamalan's series of Unbreakable, Glass, and Split,
Yes.
and there's the guy that's like really fragile, and there's a guy that's really indestructible, because there's got to be a counterbalance. Well, somewhere out there's a guy that's had the best luck in the world. Then there's Frank. He's just, he could take a two-headed coin, flip it, and it's going to come up tails somehow.
I've seen
So
that.
it's put inside.
Yes, and it just gets stuck there in a pile of shit.
It's a magnetic zone. But I'll honestly say, other than a few times, you get really down, you're like, oh shit, man, this is just too much. I've never been that complete woe is me, oh God, this sucks, whatever. So as I'm making my decisions and choices, especially after Monday's appointment, I've drawn lines. And I won't go across that line. If I have another 2 weeks where I can get my truck and drive over here and hang out with a bunch of guys, I'll take that. If you're going to operate on me and then close me up and say, well, when we got in there, it was worse than we thought, now I even lose that. Because I'm not going to recover from an exploratory surgery, and I'm going to lose a couple weeks that I might have had some fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been able to talk to people. My mind isn't affected, which I'm sure is offensive to most people that are open to that.
Well, wait, your mind isn't affected by what?
Well,
Because we could go back further. There's gonna be a
let's
whole-
just say it hasn't been altered from its normal pattern of operation.
Okay, all right.
You have a
So,
whole mind, or you won't have it on the left side?
Actually, according to the MRI, I'm not missing any brain parts, which would amaze a lot of people. Like there's some switchers or something that get turned off. But who you are, and I've said this before, I had a Facebook post where I said, who you are, the person you become, some of it is your choice. Some of it is external. You can't control how you were born. You can't control really how other people treat you unless your choice was to put yourself with those people who mistreat you. Then you're directly now affecting it. And I'm never going to say this because my wife was involved with the domestic violence thing. A lot of times women or even men can't get away from the abuser. That's not what I'm talking about. If you're on Facebook every day complaining about your relationship and you just dated 3 guys who are basically clones, so you're creating your own problem. And then you want everybody to feel sorry for you, You keep walking down that same path. And when you walk past the tree with the beehive in it, you hit the beehive. Stop that. Stop doing that.
Some would say that's psychological, like why do you like blondes as opposed to brunettes? Like, there's that moth to the flame mentality where it just seems like certain people just constantly, they love being in the rut.
Yeah. But if you break it down psychologically for a lot of people, a lot of therapists and psychologists, and all these people will say it's a learned behavior. It's a pattern of learned behavior. Well, yes, it is, but you see it, and 50 people just messaged you. Stop seeing Dan. Dan beats you over the head with a bat. Do yourself a favor. Stop seeing Dan. He beats you over the head with a bat.
That
Yeah.
could cross into borderline mental issues at some point.
Yeah.
Well, we all struggle with things like, Frank's talked about his upbringing with, lack of warmth and support and things, and a lot of people go through these things with generational trauma that have. But if you can be aware enough to recognize that there's an issue there, then that means that there's also a therapeutic approach that you can take to it. It's the decision whether or not you actually take the therapeutic approach to it is the issue. And a lot of people will sit back and that's scary because you know what you know and you don't know what you don't know. And if the fear of going into something unknown is preferable to you, then the devil you know rather than the devil you don't. And it's hey, at least I know that this is yes, it's bad, but it could be worse.
It's a fear matrix, and we've all done it. It's like you said, devil you know, devil you don't know. How many girls have you read, even screw the whole Instagram, men suck me. How many women have you heard say, I just didn't trust him. He was too good to me. Well, what does that mean? Like you only expect X for the rest of your life, and you're only going to take X. And if somebody offers you double X, you're going to pass on that because that's too frightening. How can anybody be that good?
Well, there are men out there that do the same thing.
Yeah.
That if a woman isn't needy, they feel well, if she doesn't need me, then she could just leave me.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but she is treating you like garbage.
Yeah.
And and there's men that are abusive. There's women that are abusive, and but I think what it really comes down to is we each have to look in the mirror and say, what part did I play in this? What part was my choices, and what put me in that position? Work on that first. And
So many people don't look in the mirror
well, yeah,
and self-reflect.
No one wants to look in the mirror.
Because it can't be your fault a lot of times. I think that's what it is.
well, that's part of the problem we have right now in current times is that there's this idea that you're supposed to look in the mirror and love what you see, and everything's supposed to be perfect, and it's everybody else's fault that they don't see your beauty and whatever.
Yeah.
Well, to some extent, yeah. Everybody should be looked at as another human being. Everybody should be looked at as. However, if you are doing destructive behaviors, I always being influenced by watching people suffer and struggle with their own physical health for so many years, and knowing that so many things that people go through are self-inflicted. Here's a guy who's had these things just through no fault of his own. I mean, you could argue that yes, he's smoked a lot.
Yeah. I despite my condition, I have done things that I know were not good for me. And I can also tell you the reason I did it is because I never expected to live as long as I did. And that's literally the reason. Now, whether it's responsible for my current condition, maybe, maybe not, because I had the condition long before I started smoking.
I mean,
So,
but
is the
also-
cancer a result of that? Because the cancer is exactly where my surgeries have been performed. It could
And the
be,
medications you've had to take
yeah, I
for
mean,
it.
I've taken stuff.
Oh, medicines kill your stomach.
Yeah, exactly.
They strip
So-
all good bacteria out of it
Yeah.
and make it a breeding ground for
So
disease.
that's what I was saying. It's like you have all these scars and all these adhesions and all these lines. Like you've heard stories where somebody gets operated on and they find a pill in their stomach and they analyze the pill and go, when did you take this? And somebody will be like, I haven't taken that in 15 years. It literally gets wrapped up in scar tissue. I've done stuff that's not good for me, and I've eaten stuff that's not good for me. Because honest to God, I really didn't think I was going to live that long. So I took more of the in-between approach. I'm not going to be completely self-destructive, but I'm not going to deny myself of the few pleasures I have.
Yeah, you're not going to just eat lettuce.
You gotta live. right?
It's, I would say if you wanted to say if I ever bitched or moaned about anything, it was guilt. Guilt is my number one enemy. If I go to this event today for 2 days, like if I travel 2 days before I leave, I can't eat or drink or anything like that. Then when I arrive, it takes me another day or so to get back in the sync. So say you have a party and you invite me to your party. How good am I feeling? If I go to your party and I get sick, the guilt of me ruining your party for being sick. If I don't go, I know people say stuff because I've had this happen. And it's been used against me a lot in my life too. Like, oh, you don't really care about this person or that person or whatever. Well, no, the reason I went is because I really care and I don't want to ruin their day. Or I didn't want to ruin their event. The fact that it was used against me as a weapon really is the worst part of it. Look, you may not understand it, but I'm just saying, don't use that as a weapon against somebody, you know? If I can save up for a week enough energy, like this week, after he mentioned this, I was very low energy, did what minimum I had to do, didn't stress myself out, because this is something I was interested in doing, you know? Come out, sit down, a bunch of guys, talk about some stuff, whether people find it depressing or uplifting or, you know, informational or not, it's something I wanted to do.
Well, everything depends on perspective. You can take things as depressing, or you can take it as a wake-up call and say, hey, you know what? Here's the words of somebody who's suffered and struggled through a lot of adversity in their life, and I can take what they've said and I can make the most of my life, or I can sit around and and not do something and not do something that I should that could help me.
Yeah, the sky is falling mentality is usually the worst thing you could do to yourself. But
It sounds like the best thing is live in the present, because
Yeah.
what you said before was, I don't know how long I have, so I'm going to eat this or eat that, and maybe I'll smoke here and there. I don't really care. That's not going to kill me at the end of the day.
Yeah. It's like, well, you know, the average smoker dies at 78. And I'm like, well, let's see, I died at 24, so I got some time. But
These are all good points. But what are some things? I mean, you definitely had to deal with a lot of adversity. What are some things like? What are some takeaways? Like for people out there who are like, man, I don't know if I can do it. What are some takeaways that you would tell those people to keep them going, to keep them, to keep moving forward?
Assuming they have something to keep
Legitimate.
them going.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're out there and you have a mental issue, a stress issue, even if it's an emotional care issue, there are hotlines, there are hospitals, medical, even Amazon itself. They have 24-hour a day you can call and get psychological help there. If it's not like a chemically induced thing, you're just having particular stress or mental issue, by all means, reach out and get help. If you don't have the strength to do that, talk to your best friend or your teacher, because this rift of all these young high school kids killing themselves over completely inane things like being picked on because their sneakers weren't good enough. This cultural bullying. For the love of God, get help. Reach out to somebody. Even if you think somebody doesn't care, there's somebody who does. Somebody who will step out, step up, and help you.
I think that's one of the nice things for a lot of kids these days is that their worlds are a lot bigger than ours were.
Yeah.
We had a group of kids in a small school, and now they can meet people, which is good and bad, because they can meet people that can feed into their problems as well.
Exactly.
And give them affirmation towards things that they shouldn't be affirming. They should be working against it. If something is harmful to you, if something is damaging you, like physically or mentally, you don't embrace it. You don't sit there and say, That you don't go to a support group for people that are smokers and say, I want people to tell me how great smoking is.
Yeah.
Because it's bad for you. You don't want, there's Alcoholics Anonymous. There's not, well, I guess the bar is the other place. That's, like, let's celebrate drinking.
Yeah.
But,
Well, pretzels and peanuts. So.
right. But the idea that, like, you don't glamorize things that are killing you.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody who's, I don't know too many people that are looking forward to checking out, because there's always something you could see tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
It's the ratio, it's the balance point. When things get so tilted to the one side, what do I have to look forward to tomorrow? Yes, I get to see, your grandmother when she was, well, if I stick around for everybody's thing, then I'm never going to die, and I feel like shit most of the time. And
Yeah,
when
they
I'm
live
there,
to be 98 and bitch about it the whole time, man.
Yeah.
I love those people.
Yeah.
We all had that one grandmother that, like, on the back behind the sink, she had 400 bottles of pills. She's been in agony since she was 6 days
That's
old.
my mother.
6 days old, and, she's still taking the pills. I had a great-grandmother. She died because she fell in the basement shoveling coal and broke her hip and couldn't get up. She was 97 years old.
Shoveling coal. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Philadelphia on 2nd and Diamond Street, way back.
That's where I got jumped.
Yeah.
Second diamond.
It might have been her ghost. But you asked from a positive standpoint, you really have to understand yourself. What am I capable of absorbing? How much support do I have? So for me, support is when I make my decision on the information I get Monday. I told you I already drew a line that I won't cross. Anybody who's truly my friend, anybody who truly loves me or cares about me, I don't know who they are or where they might be. They're mostly hiding, but I would too. The only thing they need to say to me is, whatever you choose, I support you 100%. I have some people who are going to really push me to do things I don't want to do. And I know it's because they love me and care about me, they're going to push me to do that. But if they really tried to understand, especially if you've been around me all these years, you've seen what I've gone through, At least let me have some choice at the end.
Yeah.
Well, I think that
So
that idea right there is something people should carry in their everyday life, not just, that's a decision you shouldn't be looking at just like towards the end of your life. If more people would look at things like, let me get some enjoy, and this doesn't say that you should become like some hedonist that like destroys your body and you're unconscious, like, you don't remember half of the experiences you've had. But you draw a balance between things. You draw a balance of like, this is what I think, I want to be able to, if somebody says to me that I'm going to be bedridden and I can move my eyes back and forth and I can't even communicate with the people that I care about, and it's just a waiting game of like, well, how much time, if you play your cards right, you can have an extra 45 minutes of life of moving your eyes.
yeah,
To me, that doesn't seem very attractive.
and there's the no value issue because, and once again, it's not a complaint. It's the fact that the way I was born, the illnesses I had, there was a lot of things I missed out on that I would have loved to do. Things before my first surgery that I did all the time. And it was just taken away from me. So it's on balance. Well, what I have left, is that good enough to fight for? Yeah, I guess so. So you asking somebody positive for me is, you always have to draw your own line in life. Going from where we started, if what's happening to you now is absolutely the worst thing that's ever happened, and you can't make a top 3 list, then it's not the worst thing that's ever happened to you, really. And your chances are pretty good that put a little mental effort into it is going to help you. In any case, it precludes a disease or whatever. how much treatment can I take? I have a vanity. I like the fact that I have a full head of hair.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, literally,
Yeah.
I identify as
and
a
this is
full head of
half.
hair.
This is half of what I used to have 20 years ago. But the idea is, for my personal dignity, I'd like to die with a full head of hair. Even though it's going to get singed, you know, and burned off and scraped off with some lady's guinea pig's corpse. Whatever.
Care
Whatever
at that
fire
point.
You
that
do have
day.
to save enough the ashes for the tea bag.
Yeah. Well, the tea bag idea was, when I die, some of the ashes are going to be put in tea bags. And a little label's going to be put on it. And it's going to say, free samples of herbal tea from such and such manufacturer. And I'll mail it to all my worst enemies. So,
Grown
most,
in New Jersey.
yeah, most people like free. Somebody's going to try a cup of me tea. And then your worst enemy is going to be inside you for the rest of your life. And I like to send it to all the girls that turned me down in high school because you said I'd never get into you. Well, I did. I managed it, and there I am.
I don't know why that tastes so nasty.
What are you saying, man? Me tea's not good?
It's a little bitter.
Yeah.
A little bitter. Disappointing.
I would go with
Bitter
that.
and disappointing.
Kind of has, not sure what that aftertaste is. Metallic. But I've always wanted to be able to legally do that. That would be, even illegally. I have friends that would do shit like that. Like literally send me out. But anybody that can reach out for help, even if it's just to talk about your problem,
Well, yeah, find a group of people that will
be
that you can
objective.
that you can talk to.
Yeah.
It's funny because we see these things happen where people, they go and they do terrible things either to themselves or other people, and a lot of the times it's because they haven't set that release valve. They haven't let go of things. They haven't had someone they can unburden themselves to, and you have to be careful because you will get people around you that will feed into the worst parts that you want to do. That will tell you, yeah, that you should do that. You should be angry at this person. Like, no. If all of your issues should begin and end in the mirror, that's what you have the ability to affect. It doesn't matter if someone else likes you, doesn't like you, or didn't like you in the way you wanted to. Most times you will look at people and they'll make choices. And a lot of us have looked at people and we've seen the choices they've made, and we know where it's going to end up. And then it ends up there, and they say, "Can you believe this happened?" I'm like, "Yes."
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I made $20 on betting on it.
Right. Yeah. Like Frank, when he put a post up there that it came up to be his birthday. I'm like, "Damn it, I missed the poll again."
Yeah,
It's like I had $20 on like that. This is going to be the year, and boom.
Yeah.
And now he goes and screws everything up, and he puts things out there that I'm not doing too well. Now everybody is like going to jump on this. It's like
everybody wants to know the date. It's like
I got 20 to 1. I got.
It's like a baby pool, where you're guessing the date. Oh, if you want to throw
8
in the
pounds,
weight,
11 ounces.
if you want to throw in the weight, how long did he last? He got down to 72.
I could take the ashes and sculpt it into one big middle finger, and put it in concrete. That would be, that would be something.
I always look at it this way.
That'd be something.
And people are always surprised that I have a kind side, and I have a sympathy side. I think the weird thing is it shows with the animals. Like, we have this possum for years. I sit on the front porch smoking. The possum comes to the foot of the porch. He chitters at me for a couple of minutes. I say,
He gives the possum a smoke.
good luck with your hunt tonight, whatever. And this went on for years. All the neighborhood dogs end up in my yard. I have birds that land on my arm when I feed them. I just have a connection with animals, which I never had connection with people. So as I got older, the biggest impediment in everybody's life is always the same thing: fear. What that fear is of, whether it be rejection or failure or whatever, it's fear. For years, I would not share my true personality with anybody. And there's only maybe 2 people who I've ever seen 100% of me. 2. That's it. But most of them over the last 15 years, Facebook time, I've gotten to see more and more who I really am, as opposed to their concept of who I was, or who they think I should be, based on, what they know,
Right.
which is how we judge anybody. It's what you know, you formulate your idea and your opinion, and then you apply it to somebody, and that's it.
Do you have any regrets that you didn't project more of your true personality, your true self out there to people that didn't know?
No. People overuse the word regret. Woulda, shoulda, coulda is a lot different than regret. I won't tell you what it is, but I only have one regret in life. That's it. One. And when you say regret, if I sat down and told you what I regretted, there was a lot of, I should have done that. I could have done it. Shit, why didn't I do that?
Yeah, I look at that. I look at that a little bit differently, because when people say regret and things like that, I think of, if you could go back and change anything in your life, and if you truly appreciate where you're at in life and the perspectives that you have, that all comes from the knowledge you've accumulated. That all comes from a point of the things you've gone through, all the crap that you've had to deal with. And if you like yourself, all those elements, if you change any of them, then you're not quite yourself anymore.
Exactly.
You're somebody else that hasn't had that perspective. And I would hate to be that person who's had life so easy that, because when hard times come along, which they always do, then you can't deal with it. Then you can't find a way to live through it. And I think that's a big issue with a lot of people, in that they think that a good life is without incident, without suffering, without pain.
They conflate good with easy.
Yeah, and everybody has things. It's like, you see people, like you see the Paris Hiltons of the world, and everybody thinks, oh, it must be so easy to be her. It's got to be horrible to be like that, because everybody has these expectations. You come from this family, they want this to happen, and you're like, well, you didn't measure up to that. You had all these opportunities, and you just became. That's got to be horrible. That's got to be, and then you're somebody who people have no expectations for. Then
that's even worse.
Well, but then you can only go up or stay where you are. So
it's worse than everybody should have at least one person in their life that encouraged them. My family wasn't really close, but my best friend Joe, his family became my family. Like, most of them a lot of them live in Pennsylvania. I could get in my truck right now. I could drive to Pennsylvania, walk up to their house, knock on the door, and I'd be welcomed by family. Even though they're cousins of cousins, I've always been part of their family. And when you say comparison-wise, I never knew my father. He knew his mother and father until he was in his 20s. I don't know about you 2 guys.
They're still alive.
So, and how old would you be? You 2.
Oh, I'm 46. He's
Okay,
48.
so, good portion of your life, so you're getting in that 50, you've known your parents. Who has it worse? I never knew my dad. He knew his dad. He had to watch his parents suffer.
Perspective.
You see your mom, she's sick, whatever. You might have to watch them, slowly go downhill or whatever. So, who has it worse? No one has it worse.
It's not a winning game at that,
Yeah,
right?
it's not a win-loss. Oh, well, you had everything and I had nothing.
Well, that's another thing that people have to look at, is that we're talking about regret. And most of the time when you have people that have regrets, it's the failure to take advantage of a situation while you have that situation available to you. So if things like this are really good topics of conversation, especially for people that don't expect something to happen to somebody they care about. Because there's so many things that you don't when my parents died, they were I was young. I didn't think of asking, like, I don't know who my dad's best friends were. I didn't know, like, what school was like. I didn't know, like, what he felt when he was on the football and wrestling teams. I didn't know a whole lot of like what he went through in the war and then as a cop in Philly after it. And I never thought to ask these questions. Never thought to ask my mom about like where she where she was with things that she went through and what it was like. But and this is one of the points of this whole project here is to get you have life experience and you want to pass that on. If your suffering can mean something to someone else that makes them avoid it, then it's not in vain. Then it's not something that's pointless. It helps somebody else that like, hey, I heard this podcast one time and there was this guy and he was talking about these things and that he went through. And if he can push through that, maybe I can push through that. If he can look for something that's going to be better, maybe I can do that. Or it can be, I'm not going to do what this guy did, or I'm not going to do what that guy did. And it's asking those questions and getting to know the people in your life, really get to know them, not just some kind of facade that you think is that person, but you get to know who they are. And so when the time comes, it's like, wow, I really knew this person in my life. I really knew there's this, they're a full-fledged person. It's not just we live in a different time now. You have nothing tangible of your father. I have no audio and video of my parents. But today, you've got cameras and cell phones and all these things that you can just, record things on and leave messages to. Like, there are things that you can do now. You could, record something, happy birthday wishes to your grandkids.
Which we had talked about. Which
For
I
the next
thought was a
10
good
years.
idea.
And then, boom, it pops up you get an email from Grandpapa, and, well, I'm 12 years old and I'm still getting a happy birthday from my grandpa. Or, like, I was thinking about this the other day, like, when Frank was recovering, his mom bought him, like, Lego ships and stuff like that to put together to keep him busy and doing something. And I was thinking, I have a friend of mine who does a YouTube channel where he films himself putting together Lego things and talks to people while he's putting Legos together. You could film yourself putting Legos together. And you could go and buy Lego sets for the grandkids. Like, say to them, like, hey, could you give this to the kids on their birthday for the next 5 years?
But it's funny too, you said like, it's record the happy birthdays, and you're like, oh my God, you look so much older. I look the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, you're not aging well, kid. When you're 12.
Yeah. Like, hey, look, I'm the same. I stopped aging here. It's like, but you could leave a message there that's kind of age appropriate. Well, maybe not you, because like you might have them.
I screw up sometimes.
Yeah, it's like, you're 12 years old now. Have you stolen any hubcaps yet? That could be something. But we have the opportunity now to leave something that you're not just a name on a tombstone somewhere. You're an actual person that lived and had experiences and dreams and goals and things that you've achieved, didn't achieve, and there's reasons why you didn't achieve them. Your perspective changed and your goals changed. But you get there's an opportunity there for the people that may have never, like, I say this all the time to people, that there's someone in your life that you don't remember, that you've had an impact on, that they go around and they talk about, like, yeah, I knew this guy Frank once, and he said this thing to me. And if I were able, like, I hear this guy and I'm interviewing this guy, and like, what was this guy's name? Who was Frank Brandel? Like, I go and like, Frank, yeah, do I know you? No, not at all. But I met this guy, and he said that you had his name was like, Bob Ishkabibble, and you're like, who? Yeah, he said he worked with you once. Like, I have no idea who that was, and I have no idea what I said. Well, man, it impacted this guy's whole life.
Well, just like the Facebook jokes, like that impacts someone's life. You don't even really know.
Yeah.
Like
I was, one of the things you think about is yourself when you're struggling, especially if you're struggling. think about the people you've had an impact on. Literally, what impact? My wife was fascinated when we first got together because she wanted to be people who actually liked me. And she wanted to know why. Like, she could not figure out why people liked me. And then she meets all these people that like me. And she was blown away by that. Like, why do they like you?
Even people that made a Frank-shaped pinata for all the kids to beat up on.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. And then you go through this whole thing where she's sitting there at my friend's family, where we always get together. And his cousin, when we were in our early 20s, she was 5, 6. And we would go over our house. Like most 6-year-olds, she had, play yard, and she had one of those plastic houses. The toy house that the roof comes off and stuff. The dog would get in there. And the story she told was, now at the time I was 200 pounds, my buddy was well over 300 pounds. We were huge. So she told the story to my wife about how I used to get inside that plastic house with her and read to her. Read her books. Whenever I come over, I would read to her. And it influenced who she was and what she wanted to be when she got older. Because the big biker dude got in the playhouse with her and read to her. That's a major impact that you might not think about.
Yeah.
And not to mention like the little things she said, I worked with somebody for a short period of time or whatever. The slightest thing you do, it's butterfly effect. Everything is butterfly effect. It may or may not at the time strike you. It may never strike you. But to that person, that meant something to them. That was a pivotal moment in your life. So whether you're the person that's down and out or the person that's standing next to the person that's down and out, cost you absolutely nothing to be nice to that person or say something encouraging. And you don't have to be, everybody will say, well, I don't want to be drawn into their shit. It's not about being drawn into their shit, because you draw your own lines personally, what you want and will not do. And as a person's not a leech, they'll take it for what it is. You might end up with a new friend. What's the worst that's going to happen as far as you might end up with a new friend? As long as you avoid psychos, which is hard.
It's hard in Jersey.
Yeah. If you're married, psychos.
Look at the internet, that's even worse.
Yeah.
When you thought that, like, we've hit a limit and then they say, here, hold my beer, it gets bad.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get wrapping this up for now because it's a little chilly in here, and I've got a lot more body fat than you do, and I'm feeling chilly, so I'm sure you're feeling like...
Yeah, I shouldn't tell you the truth, only my hands. I've been dressing extra warm. I'm a winter person, and I can tell you that I have not been happy the last month or so.
Yeah.
So let's look at this and say, like, if the doctor comes and says to you, if we can do this, but it's going to lay you up. If we don't do this, you have about this much more time. What are you going to do with filling up that time with that's, not to be cliche, but like a bucket list of things? Is there anything that you're really missing that you
There is
would really
nothing
like
I
to do?
could physically do at this point that would be in my bucket list.
Yes, legally, because
No, even illegally. Sorry. I just don't have what it takes to do
The strength.
much of anything.
right.
I'm like, if you were to ask me right now how much longer I have left, I would say less than 6 weeks. I know my body pretty well. I know my mentality pretty well. No treatment, I'd say 6 weeks. And most of that would be at the lower end.
Well, you and I are going to try and get and do this together, like on a as regular basis we can for however much time you got left, and you can tolerate it, because I think you've got a great perspective for people that they need to hear. There's too many people out there that find things that are hopeless, that are like, and here you are, like, trying to leave something of substance that can exist after you, and really that's all we can leave behind anymore. There's been some people throughout history that have written things and people have read, but the average person has, for the most part, come and gone, and no one's ever been exposed to anything that's beneficial that can help the rest of the world in just a perspective. And
a loss of wisdom, because we all know the library at Alexandria was destroyed. How much wisdom was lost? People
Yeah.
who never heard of. But your grandfather's wisdom might have been great, but when you get to your kids, you might mention something that grandpa said someday or something like that. But it all disappears. Except for that guy who sprayed, painted the huge dick on the wall in Pompeii, and they dug it up a couple years ago. That guy's famous. You may
Yeah.
not know his name, but 2,000 years ago,
The
he
dick
drew
guy.
a dick on that
more
building.
importantly, who was the guy that posed for it?
Yeah.
He was probably pretty popular.
I mean, to me, something like that's hysterical. It's literally vandalism that's lasted 2,200 years or whatever.
Yeah.
He's upstairs laughing.
That's awesome. You did what? You invented what? The telephone? Yeah, you. Quantum mechanics. What'd
I'm
you
the
do?
dick guy.
I'm the Pompeii dick guy.
Yeah, dick on the wall down there. They got a museum. People pay to look at that dick, man. They pay to see it.
I think you guys should, keep doing it as long as you can, because the words hit different when it's in your situation.
Well, we're all in his situation. We just don't know it.
Yeah.
And that's
Well,
the
different
biggest.
levels of the situation.
Well, that's the biggest crime because, like, look, any one of us can walk out of here and get hit by a bus. It's like you could, there's senseless things that happen every single day,
Yeah.
and
we're in Philly, so
Yeah, you're not
more
entitled to another
senseless than
day.
most.
well, yeah, it's like I was watching the news and current things that have happened and tragedies, and these are places that usually don't get hit with stuff like that, but you're in the city and you see a lot of these things happen.
You're
all the time.
celebrating on New Year's and you get run over by a truck.
Yeah.
Like 10, 11, 15 people died?
Right.
No,
And then you think, like, why? It's so don't take anything for granted. Don't waste the days. Don't sit there and count. Like, everything has to be in balance. You don't blow all of your paycheck on having fun. Fun and happiness are two different things. Happiness is
I guess no more cocaine and hookers. That's out.
That's happiness.
well, like if you ask Frank, like, happiness was a 200-pound biker dude sitting inside of a dollhouse reading to a little girl and seeing the joy on her face. That's happiness.
It's like your father said that time. It's like, happiness to me now is just taking a good shit.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
It's a sliding scale.
Well, yeah, it's a relative thing. And so when you look at this, it's like, I think that, it's a shame that the way things worked out, I've, been exposed to a little of this, like, YouTube thing and whatnot, and over the last couple of years. And it's a shame that, like, it took that long, because there's so many. We could have been doing this on a regular basis. We could have been doing things like, you get together, like, even remotely, and you just kind of, like, toss things back and forth.
It's become more and more popular now. You see it. I appreciate more something like this as opposed to the influencer type of attitude or whatever.
Yeah, they're going out
Because
there.
they're trying to get something out of it.
Yeah.
Like, this is really just saying, look, don't give up hope.
Yeah.
Be
Yeah.
present.
Right.
Don't take tomorrow for granted because it may never come.
And like Andy said, life is a balance. Like, I did things I knew were not good for me because not going to be. But I don't have a 200 credit score, and
It's
You know,
like that. You
something.
were
I
telling
was
the
always
story.
responsible, but on the other side, I didn't care. Would I have liked to have more fun, taken more vacations, spent more time with family? Yes, absolutely. But other than somebody blaming me for it or telling me it's my fault, that's what I would have rather have been doing. But it was never in the situation where I could really do it. So everybody will say, well, you got to get yourself out of that situation. I can tell you, you can't get yourself out of everything.
Yeah.
It's
But you
very
can do the
difficult.
best you can with what you have.
Right. And everything that when people say that they would go back and change something,
Mhm.
think of all the things that you would have lost if you had changed that.
Yeah.
If there, I
Back
know.
to the future.
Well, I know people that have had absolutely horrible relationships with an ex-spouse, but would you
So-
trade your kids in for that?
Or
I was just
or even,
about to use that example.
or even if they didn't have kids, that could have made them stronger to get to that next level or next
Right.
point in their life.
Exactly.
Yeah, it gives you growth, and that's really what we're looking for. Is we need to help people grow as people, and that only comes from self-reflection and self-evaluation.
Well, my daughter was struggling with mental health and anorexia and a bunch of other stuff. So yeah, we had her in a facility for anorexia, and I'm very black and white. It's this, it's this, it's this,
Whole life.
and I'm very confident that I'm right. And you could say you're wrong on this or that, and that's fine. But the doctor, she told me, she's like, it's not. It is black and white to you. I understand that, but it's how you deliver. She's like, you can't deliver it to her like that because the way she receives it is totally different. I could deliver it to you and you might be totally fine with that. So through that, I had to read multiple books on how to change the delivery of what I'm saying to get the same result.
So the best way to put this to the technical people is, as you're setting up the table, I've never done this before. So there's a camera, there's 3 microphones and 2 computers. You have to understand the receptor in order to deliver the message.
Mhm.
If I did this, I might have left the microphone undone and would have been lost. So it's like the old Broadway joke, know your audience. If you know your audience is suffering, in your case, your daughter, from a disease, and the doctor points out to you, it sounds very easy to you to say this to her. But the same thing that's causing the anorexia will cause her to receive it wrong.
Mhm.
And you did the right thing. You learned how to deliver it in a manner in which she could understand it without being offended.
Well,
that's-
that's still a work in progress.
Yeah.
I mean, that's important. That's important. You know, it's like you can't beat somebody over the head, and everybody's life story in their head is different. Because there are people who will send you a text, and you can, depending on your mood, you can read that text 10 times and come up with 10 different meanings. for
Yeah.
that text.
That's why emojis were invented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Even the emojis I get wrong. Somebody just told me the one emoji meant something totally different than what I thought it was.
I always just send the eggplant and the donut.
Yeah.
Well, it's punctuation. It's punctuation. Like,
How do you feel
what's
about
that in the road? A
donut?
head?
I'm good with donut. You know. Emotionally, how are you? Is hunger an emotion? Well, it's not donut. You know, I'm there.
Thumbs up everything.
Thumbs up in the donut. But
But
it's interpretation. It's how you interpret the event. It's how you interpret the word. That person may not have a great day, and you see it on the kids all the time with the social media, and even adults. Wait a minute. Last week your texts were like, "You loved me and it was the greatest thing in the world," and this week you're dogging me with one-word answers, and then 2 weeks later you're back to where you are. So this constant trying to understand what other people are thinking and feeling, you have to ask. You literally have to ask, what do you literally mean by this? And, I know most people can't write freehand, and I'm a slow texter as it is, but there's no real communication
It
anymore.
is all down to communication. People communicate differently, right? Like the way you say a message and the way I say a message is completely different, even though we might be communicating the same thing.
And it's like you said, the person receiving it. You have to know your audience. You have to know how to change that message tonally and
Call it the group chat theory. I pick up a group chat with 20 people in it, and I send a message that to me sounds like completely inane, whatever, just basic information. And then you get a private message from one of these people like, "What are you fucking asshole?" Stuff like, it's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just saying that we should all go to Dan's house because Dan's wife makes good chili, and somehow you've turned this into,
let's not go to your house because I hate your food.
yeah.
yeah.
It's like I use this analogy a lot with people that anybody who's been married.
I
says,
thought you were going to say women interpretation.
well, it's
Yeah.
it's
It
this
is.
like what do you want for dinner? I don't care. How about meatloaf? Fine.
Yeah.
What do you really want? Meatloaf's fine. No, you said fine. You didn't say yes. Means you don't like my meatloaf. Why don't you love me anymore? How did you?
How do you make that leap?
But there's people out there like, I'll send. How about that? No, you didn't have to say that so mean. It was a yes or no question. I said no. It's like
I think you emphasize the a little too much in that.
if you say nope or fuck no, that's a big difference. It's like, so you have to try and like scale this down to like, and look, text is a horrible way of communication because
Yeah.
it depends on what mood the receiver's in, what mood the sender's in. It's like, because you could be very serious about something, somebody could think like, oh, must be kidding. Like, oh, I didn't realize, like, hey, Frank, how you doing? I'm dying. Ah, that's pretty funny. Like, oh, that's fucking great. I'm dying here. You think it's funny. It's like,
Yeah, but
oh,
with
you were
me,
serious.
I would think it's hysterical.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
you doing? And then people ask you, how you doing? Not dead yet. That's the answer.
Yeah.
Like you ask me
Yeah,
how I
you say it
was,
all the time.
not dead
I'm
yet.
still here.
How are you with that? Well, it has its ups and downs.
Doctor gave me 6 months, couldn't pay the bill, gave me another 6 months.
Yeah.
One of the things I hate most in the world is I can actually write, freehand write stories, letters. I'm a very good writer. Other than that, I have no talent. Like Andy's artistic. I can come up with some devious
You could say on the spectrum.
devious shit in my head. But I am a prolific writer. And there's nothing I enjoy more than writing a longhand letter to somebody. And there's nothing people hate more than getting anything other than a text.
Yeah.
Because
That's something that I think.
I can guarantee you get the message out of that.
I have a harder time verbally communicating than I can with writing. So I like when I was going through stuff with my wife, I would much rather write her a letter.
I was talking to a guy yesterday about this, a friend of mine,
Because you can be concise.
and he's done a lot of journaling since like the 90s. And I said, you know what you should do? I think you should read them and record it and save it like that because like again, not everybody's going to care, but you could have somebody like, I mean, you're talking about the guy who drew the dick in Pompeii.
Mm-hmm.
Someday there could be somebody sifting through archives that finds like the life and times of Frank Brandel, and like this guy was pretty funny. He was like, missed opportunity here. He could have had a comedy show. Like, granted, somebody would have been offended and killed him in the time period, but it was funny.
Probably
And-
my agent.
Yeah.
That's comedians offend.
Well,
Yeah.
look, what's more offensive than life? If you think about it, like life is the most
That's the
offensive
only
thing.
comedy I like, the offensive stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
Like
because
Dave Chappelle.
it puts things in
But
perspective.
it's thought provoking. You have to think about the meaning of what he's saying. And the offense only comes. My Facebook thing says, I only offend people with closed minds. If you have an open mind, you shouldn't be offended. You know how hard it is for somebody to offend me?
I've tried.
Like, I've had professionals try. I'm like, dude, I literally don't find that
But
offensive.
now it's become so cliche
It's
and
normal.
overused. It
Yeah.
almost has no meaning anymore.
Yeah.
I'm offended by that.
Yeah.
Huh?
Like
I'm waiting.
My employee, I'm a corporate job, and I'm talking, giving a speech and stuff, and I said he, she, and afterwards she's a lesbian, and she's like, why don't you just say they? I said, because I don't. I'll say he or
Could be
she.
they, but it has to be they, them.
But she said, well, that's not like all inclusive. I
Yeah.
said, well, it is. Because I said he, she.
Huh?
You know, the only way you can get away with that is go southern. Y'all.
Or,
How y'all feel
use.
about that?
or Philly, use.
Yeah.
Y'all means anything.
Yeah.
Y'all mean all y'all. You mean y'all. Just all of you.
Well, that's that's some of the things that like people need to really look at is,
Offense culture.
well, are you going to spend your time? You're wasting your life if you're offended by things.
Yes.
If you're being offended by something, that's
You're
time
drawing
and-
your attention to that.
your time and energy could be much better off doing something productive.
I have a theory on that. I had the whole movement where women are delaying getting married, delaying having kids. They tend to be white, well-educated, liberal women.
Mhm.
They have nothing better to do. They don't have no kids. They're just in this corporate job or whatever they're doing, and that's their big thing. Like, that's the stink they want to make. If you have kids and you're happy with your life, no one has time to deal with this bullshit. I could give a shit what you call some lady who you don't even know.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the biggest issue is they're unhappy with their life, and now they want to wag their finger at you and make chastise you because you didn't quote unquote address them or someone properly. It's just like,
You're
That-
right.
who's got time for that shit?
You're right. The only thing left out is it's always been that way.
Well,
You go
I-
back to Victorian times.
So you
Women-
you don't see it being 10 times worse now than, let's say,
Because
15,
of social
20 years
media.
ago. Okay.
It's
Yeah.
worse. But think about Victorian times. You had all these proper ladies who were educated but weren't allowed to work. They'd get together in their little groups and they would decide what was wrong with society.
Yeah.
And it's always been the same low, high middle class, low rich.
So we
The
should get
really
rid of the
rich don't
women.
give two
Should
shits.
never let them bitches drive.
Yeah. Voting, now we're gonna vote, And then it's whatever they needed to do to make themselves feel like they were included or in some way important, they always had to have a cause. Was the cause just? A lot of time it was. And a lot of time it was, what the fuck are you talking about?
So the Muslims had it right.
You know,
Keep them pregnant, no driving.
Put a cloth over their head.
yeah, it's like, what are you talking about?
But
But
I have to cut all this shit out.
well, you're the editor, so. And you're gonna have to edit out the stuff about Bob and his situation, so his
Yeah,
daughter doesn't
because-
get her.
yeah, I don't, I wouldn't feel right about that.
But yeah,
Well,
I
think
mean,
there's two versions, right?
well, yeah.
Potentially a published version
Yeah.
and potentially.
But you know what? This is something
And
that's
it's how you receive it, right?
Yeah.
Because I may be comfortable with that, right? Because it's like, all
Hey,
right,
you know
that's
what?
his wish.
you know what I look at it like this. I would respect somebody's desires and wishes like that. He said to me, I talked to him and he was and I said, look, whatever you want to do, I got your back 100%. I don't, it's not my life. It's not, I'm not the one going to sit there and be going through this. And what do you have to look forward to is sitting in one spot in pain.
I think as long as you go through all those checks and balances, right? I want to go to Dr. Kevorkian. All right, are you mentally sane? Yes. Did you
Well-
do this? Well, we'll
Well,
throw
if
that
you're
up in the
contemplating
air.
the alternative, probably not.
Dude, you
But-
need a
but
shovel
these-
to help you dig me in?
Well, but that's the idea. You have to look at things like, have I exhausted every recourse? Last time he went through this, he was
reasonable
Or
recourse.
do you want to?
Yeah.
The fact that he's
The
been down
surgery.
this road before, he's going into Monday a lot more informed patient than he was
Yeah.
Yeah.
in 1992.
I've driven this road many times, and I know what's up there. When you
Pothole.
talk about plus and minus with the Facebook change, in a way it helps a little bit. But the worst thing that happened to me when I had the first surgery in '92 is your friends come to visit you at the hospital. Now you got to remember you're young, so early 20s, mid 20s. And they all come in and cheer you up, and as soon as they look at you, you can see the look on their face. And it wasn't that they didn't feel bad for you. It wasn't that they didn't care about you, but they could see themselves in your place. I lost 98% of my friends. I mean, lost them forever. Because when they couldn't come back and face me, that guilt for them, I guess, was too much. Gone. So, for the next, let's say, 20 years till Facebook really came along, I had 2 friends. That was really it, just 2. That was okay with me, I had my extended family, I had 2 friends. That was enough. When I had the second surgery, I knew these 2 weren't going anywhere because they go right around the first time. So, and so far, everybody's been relatively supportive,
Well, I think it's much better to have few deep friends
Yes.
than many shallow.
well, yeah.
Because the many shallow, if you're struggling, and you could really reach out to that person and say, "Look, I'm struggling." The shallow friend is not going to help.
No.
They're not going to take you serious. Or it's like if you're ready to commit suicide, they're not going to be of any value to you at all.
What's that line with the, if you got a body 2 o'clock in the morning, how many people can you call?
Yeah.
I know exactly who I can call.
Well, that's like the guy who says that if I won the lottery, I would call everybody I knew and tell them I'm in trouble and say I need $500.
Yeah.
And whoever answered, I'd remember when I cashed the check.
500, I think you probably got up that. I mean,
5,000.
Yeah, 5,000. 5,000, that's bigger enough to consider, but
Well, I'd have to knock it down to $20 because most of my friends are broke.
you don't have to make 2 phone calls.
Yeah. Dude, I'm kind of, I need $20. Yeah, but then, you know, it's everybody says, well, wasn't it depressing losing all your friends like that? And I said, well, I understood from their point of view, but then they truly were really good friends.
I was just
I
going
was
to
just
say
going to
that.
say, in one way, it's got to be refreshing.
So
Because you're like, all right, now, these guys.
You know the irony though? At some point, everybody's going to be in that position that he's in and sitting there and like, and you wonder if most people won't, but they'll get self-reflection like, damn.
is that going to happen to me?
I remember when Frank was in that position and I abandoned him because I was like, you know, and there's reasons for things. Everybody's got like life and stuff like that happens and interferes and stuff, but it's occasionally check in.
A lot of people just don't know what to say.
Well, yeah, but you know what?
You say that.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say.
Yeah, but like even like I'm not good at funerals because of that exact thing. Like it's not because I don't want to be supported, but I'm also like. Oh,
Well, I said to him, like, look, I expect
You dead yet?
every year on my birthday, I expect something to fall inexplicably, and if not, you're a shitty friend.
Yeah. I'm not
Yeah.
taunting your ass.
Yeah, like come on, like, and you know, and tell you what, I will, as payment, as repayment, I will leave my internet browser up on the Pornhub. You walk by and like, you
Yeah,
know,
but I really ain't into South American donkey porn, so
yet you haven't seen what hell's like.
yeah. I assume it's donkeys without saddles.
Raw dog.
Yeah,
Well,
you get raw dogged by a pony.
well, this has been great, and we'll have to get together, do this again and
But just so
again.
you know, before you dive in, it's Andy's idea to have other people here to kind of gauge reaction.
Well, you have
ask
to because
questions.
you know when you know somebody well, and I won't ask questions because I already know answers to.
Mhm.
And you need somebody else that has to hear these things and kind of bounce them off and get a different
I'm
perspective.
like, oh, well, who's this? Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
What year was that?
Where's Bob Suckermat?
Yeah, but that's what you have to do. You have to have somebody else that can like field questions and like and hear things from a different perspective. Because like, you know, as Sean had said earlier today about like that, you know, a lot of people think that everybody's life should be interesting to hear.
At least at some point.
If nothing, it's like I've never met anybody, or maybe it's just because I've never talked to anybody who's completely uninteresting. But everybody's got something that's a cool story. They may only have one or two.
Plus, a lot of people have walked in similar shoes.
Yeah.
Like when you find out, like, oh, we lost our brother. Someone else, like, oh, I lost my brother, or I lost my son or daughter. Someone else has happened. Someone else is going through cancer and treatment and
There's always a relatable point to another human being.
Yeah.
There
and
has to
learning
be.
experience. This is what helped me. This is what helped me. Right?
Yeah.
But
And there's,
I don't care how differentiated you are from me to a guy living in the jungles of Africa. There's at least one human connection there. That guy loves his grandkids. I love my grandkids. Okay, well, that's one thing.
and everywhere, no matter where you are in the world, there's somebody that's asking their wife or the woman in their life what they want for dinner and not getting an answer.
That's exactly right. Anything's okay. What is this?
Where do you want to go to dinner?
Oh,
I don't
I
care.
don't know.
The question every night. What are
Well,
we doing for dinner?
the woman on death row, they ask her what she wants for her last meal. She says, I don't know, what are you going to have?
That's why I don't execute women anymore. It takes too long.
I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys, feeling free. I have no issue responding to people asking me questions. For whatever reason, I've always been a good public speaker. maybe I'm just narcissistic.
Well, narcissism is when you go and you pursue the attention. You pursue that, it's honesty is what makes people being able to speak freely and uninhibitedly. Today we have, like Sean pointed out, with all the influencers and stuff like that, they do things only for attention and for
Exactly.
clicks and things like that. The intention of doing things like this is just maybe there's something somebody can take away from this and then say, you know what? Sooner or later, most of us will not get the luxury of having a heart attack at 95 years old with 3 hookers.
That you haven't paid yet.
I always think of that line. We were talking about this the other week walking in Grumpy Old Man, when he walks out and he goes, "Oh, did you hear about Chuck? Dropped dead in a heart attack." And then the other guy
Lucky
responds,
bastard.
goes, "Lucky bastard."
Yeah.
And it's like, I remember watching that when I was young, and I was like, "Wow, that's fucked up." And now I look at it now as an older man, and I'm like,
That's great.
"That's fucking awesome."
Yeah, Chuck he got it good, didn't he?
Yeah. I mean, what's your alternative? Like to sit there with people with tubes in you and stuff like that, and you're like, everybody comes along and they're crying. If you make it to a hospital, I am totally bringing something inappropriate in there,
Well, plus, if you make it to 90, 95, you're alone. You're really alone.
I'm bringing in a thing like congratulations on your retirement.
I mean, I remember my grandma saying to me, she's like, "I'm ready to go." My grandmother.
Yeah.
Like, she was 90. She's like, "Everyone I know is dead other than you guys." She's like, I'm ready to go.
That's what my wife's grandmother said. She was like, "All my friends are dead.
Yeah.
My husband's been dead for 30 years. I've watched most of the family grow up. I've had enough. I had a good life. Okay, that's enough of this."
Yeah.
I've thought about this a lot because there's my dad, divorces my mom, and finally, he's like, "Well, I'm dying. Well, get away from her." 7 months later, she follows him. I mean, that's spite.
Well,
That's
No,
spite.
spite is you burying them on top of each other. That's spite. That's all the way out the door spite. I will haunt this Peg and Al Bundy. "Oh, Al, I got the spot right on top of you."
Well, hey, at least you have been immortalized in action figure form.
Yeah.
I like the idea of that middle finger cast. You should take a mold of his hand.
Yeah.
They made a scan of my face one time because I had to go to a wedding on Halloween and I couldn't go to the party. So they borrowed my clothes, made a scan of my face, gave me a hat, so I could attend the party.
That's cool.
We've done some pretty cool jokes to people. We have a friend that lives up in buttfuck nowhere, Pennsylvania, and when the Girl Scout cookies came out one year, she didn't have anybody up there to buy them from, and she contacted us, and Andy made up a box, Girl Scout cookies, and put it in a box and labeled said box, Raoul's Exotic Gifts, 500 horsepower anal intruder. Well, up there in the middle of nowhere, they all know each other. So apparently the UPS guy sat in their driveway for 2 hours for her to come home so she could handle the box. And keep in mind, neither of us had ever met her husband. And he looked at the box, and apparently his reaction was not enough horsepower. And it was freaking hysterical. I mean, we've done some messed up shit to people. I mean, but all within the realms of tasteful messed up shit.
Legal.
Well,
in
I-
most 48 states.
tasteful is relative. So.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, some of the shit you post, I'm like, man, he fucked up.
well,
Yeah,
I
that's
say
true.
I appreciate you guys coming. I had a good time.
Yeah,
I did
Hopefully we can
too.
do it again.
yeah. Let me know. I'm up for doing it again. I know we've been talking about. We just gotta
Well, look, things come along and it triggers it. It's
Yeah.
like, all right, now there's immediacy. It's got to get done. He doesn't have a whole lot of time. He's going to be around for this stuff. And health wise, I don't know how. I was going to say, if you need me to
Just take
drive, pick you up.
ivermectin.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Yeah, give that a shot. And if you take enough of it, don't worry about anything. But because
I'm curious if they're gonna stick you on Keytruda.
I've heard of it, but I don't know what it is.
That's been like.
Here he goes trying to fucking market the
Yeah,
drugs.
there he
again,
is.
You know what I mean?
You disgusting person.
He was a car salesman. He said, like, look, I know you only got a few weeks left, but would you be interested in buying
You know,
We got a nice
Hey, that's
Buick
what they put
Skylark.
your car on.
I
That's
fucking-
100.
I fucking shit you not. My truck is 20 years old, and it's finally starting to rust up the back end.
The
shit's starting to
trombone
rust
part.
out. I was going to go buy a brand new truck and never make a payment on it. They're like, oh, yeah.
Get great credit.
I'll tell you what, they give you, it's a 30-day grace, right?
Yeah.
Before the payments start.
Guess what?
You got that 820 credit, they're going to be like, oh man, we hit the jackpot.
We'll give you a great interest rate.
No.
No, don't worry about it. I'm not worried about the interest
No,
rate.
you'll get another 10 years and you're going to go, fuck, now I got this truck payment.
You're like, what the fuck, man? You bought a car.
Hey Amazon, can I get some more overtime?
You're
This
like,
thing's costing me $2,000 a month. No, some of the truck prices are
Oh,
astronomical.
Crazy.
well, the frame by the back wheels, the main frame is starting to rust out. I mean, it's 20 years old. I'm the original owner. Bought it right off it. The only accessory was the rear sliding window with the air conditioning. It only has like 86,000 miles on it. The engine itself.
2004.
I like shit that makes good stories. And that sounds like a fucking good story.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, because as you get older in life, that's really all you got.
Yeah.
Is you got the stories.
Yeah.
But a lot of the stuff you do is, you know, that was what I said earlier when I was saying the eulogy for Bob, or, you know, just speaking. When I realized that we were the last people who were alive that remembered that story's gone.
Yeah.
When I'm gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
Because anybody who's ever heard the story, I guarantee, first off, they're not going to remember the whole story. And other than Bob telling it, it's been edited. You have to edit it, or it'll be big trouble.
But that could be pretty epic when someone goes, oh yeah, did you hear about Frankie? He got stomach cancer. He gave him a few weeks. You know what he did? He went out and bought a brand new truck and never fucking paid it.
He drove it for a week and dropped dead. I make it even worse. Just drive it into a ditch and blow it up. You know.
Oh, like the Tesla.
And they were stunned to find it. Like, wow, he's very charitable. He's very giving.
Extremely charitable.
And I mean, this guy, he would dress up as Santa Claus, do toys for tots, all these things. And like, you think, you're like, Bob? First of all, I don't know that I would want Bob around my kids because they might come around saying like, you know, hey mom, when the fuck's Santa coming?
Yeah.
It's, you know, but
The filter wasn't engaged.
Why does Santa smell like Orly?
but he, and then, well, he's gone now, so he won't get pissed off at us for saying this, but he was on the liver transplant list, and he had the option to get a liver, and there was a guy in the bed next to him that was younger than him, had a wife and family. He needed a liver, so Bob said, "Give it to him. I'm good."
I kind of hope nobody that was close to him sees that, especially his daughter. But he told me when we talked, I don't know if the guy was literally in the bed next to him, but at the same time, we talked and he goes, I know you'll understand. I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
I can't do it anymore. And yeah, I understood. You know? He says, yeah, I can do this, but why? I mean, he lasted, what, 12 years?
Yeah.
12 years.
And he
after
gave
his
6 months to
diagnosis,
live.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.